This week on the Powell Not Found podcast, we're talking Yankees spring training. Marcus Stroman doesn't want to be a starter. Giancarlo Stanton is hurt. The Yankees are no longer the big financial power in Major League Baseball. And we have a review of a very old movie in 2022 of The Menu since I was on travel this week. Let's hit it. Let's go. Here we go for the show. Let's go.
I'm going to tell you a story about a girl who loves gin. A national pandemic seized her birthday celebration. Although she knew it was coming, we tried not to tell her. She brewed some Irish breakfast. Did she knew her birthday was getting corona? It was like there was
Hey, everybody, and welcome to episode 53 of the Powell Not Found podcast, here for the week of February 17th, 2025. We are a little bit late this week because of some travel that I was on, so I appreciate everybody kind of sticking with us. Oh, there goes one of my figurines on the desk. We have a pretty good show for you today. We're going to keep it tight. We're going to keep it moving this week. But before I do that, let me remind everybody to go ahead and subscribe at the YouTube channel at Powell Not Found. That's where you'll find the video version of the podcast, and go to anywhere that you see podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, all that kind of stuff. The podcast is available there for your download convenience. I was on a little bit of travel this week, seeing family and doing things for work. So I had a lot of time to catch up on movies, catch up on things. All the stuff seemed to be debuting this week. Captain America, the SNL 50, all the celebrations. I didn't get to tune into much of it just because of how busy my schedule was. But judging from the looks of SNL 50, it seems like they really kind of pulled out the stops. I saw the Paul McCartney concert. I liked all the throwbacks to original clips that were happening in Saturday Night Live history. I saw the very opening of the official concert, the official show on Sunday night last night, and Paul Simon and Sabrina Carpenter's duet of Homeward Bound was pretty cool, and very, very much a cool throwback to his old duet with George Harrison from 1976. Where they did that song, and they also did Here Comes the Sun. If you haven't seen that original clip of George Harrison and Paul Simon playing together, go check it out. Obviously, Paul McCartney closing out the show. I got to see clips of that as well. I think that was very, very interesting. I mean, it was a star-studded night in Studio 8H there in NBC. So I'm looking forward to actually seeing all 3 hours of it. It's going to be a long haul, and hopefully by the time I see it, maybe next week, I can give a little bit more of an accurate review. Very, very interesting to see all those cast members mix and see them all on one stage and interacting with each other. Also, I kind of forgot how intertwined the Beatles are with SNL. SNL is one of the shows that back in 1979, 1980, or maybe it was 1974. I can't remember exactly the year, but Lorne Michaels tried to bribe the Beatles to get back together on the show. And I think later on, George Harrison appeared asking for the money. George Harrison performed in 1976, as previously stated, and McCartney has performed many times on that show as performing his songs and as a performer. So it was only fitting that after all these celebrities kind of coming in and doing their bit, that it could be closed out by a Beatle, by Paul McCartney. And for a guy who is 83 years old, gotta say, the voice a little croaky, but for 83, if I could rock that hard, I think I'd be doing a pretty good. I think I'd be doing pretty good for myself. So very excited to go see that show. But first up, we have a review of a movie I wanted to see for a long time. And because I've been traveling a lot, I think there has been more of an onus on myself to go seek out different restaurants that are popular in each area that I'm visiting, whether I'm in Colorado or whether I'm in Arizona or whether I'm in California or anything like that. I want to try to find that restaurant that really is making headlines and try to diversify my palate. Now, clearly, I wasn't the only one thinking this way, because there has been a deluge of different shows on Netflix, on different streaming services that are highlighting real culinary experiences. I mean, the culinary experiences I'm going after are very, very cheap. They're very, very, easy to access. But there's a different level, a higher level of culinary experiences in these Michelin places that have been popping up in urban areas around our country. And you can see a lot of them on shows like Chef's Table, right? You can see, we've grown a lot from the original food shows that there used to be in Man versus Food and Diners, Drive-ins, and whatever it's called, the Guy Fieri show, to seeing real chefs, display and plate something not akin to food, but something more akin to kind of art on a plate. Something that you'd feel bad eating if you got presented with it. So with that in mind, I had missed in 2022 the movie The Menu, which appeared on the surface to me to be a parody of all of these shows, right? Specifically Chef's Table, these shows where they'd talk to these chefs, having this, these amazing menus and plating these beautiful works of art, and they wanted to parody it with this movie. So I went into it thinking, hey, I missed this movie. Let's go check it out. Did not expect what I watched. It was labeled as a comedy by Netflix, and it is more of a the darkest of takes of this world that we keep on getting presented with. The slow motion, lazy Susan shot of a beautiful plated work of art dish, and put in this world where this chef, played by Ralph Fiennes, slowly descends into madness with some of his customers. It is very much Chef's Table meets The Most Dangerous Game, that short story that's very famous. If you've read anything, you've probably read that in school at one point. I certainly read it in high school. It is a very, very dark tale. This also stars Anya Taylor-Joy, who kind of plays the character of the audience member, the viewer, the normal character, who's on a date with her, who's on a date to go to this kind of restaurant experience with her co-star Nicholas Hoult, who plays Tyler, who is obsessed with this food culture that I'm talking about. This Michelin, being a part of this Michelin world, being a part of these cooks' world. He's really the art collector to whatever culinary dining is. We also meet different kind of archetypes that fill in this experience, this culinary experience. Three, seemingly rich tech bros. We see a food critic and their partner or whatever. We see a very, very rich couple, and we see a celebrity played by John Leguizamo, of all people, fill in all the other tables here. And we go through each course, and you really are put in this world of like high art culinary experiences. But as you can tell, as you keep on as watching, these things tend to start unraveling very quickly, and you start realizing and sensing something is wrong very quick right off the bat. Excuse me, I had to be on that mute button for a second. So with that said, it's an intriguing watch. It's only about 90 minutes long. Anya Taylor-Joy does a great job being us in this situation, being the viewer, just being a fish out of water in this experience, and not only with her date, who's played by Nicholas Hoult, who does a great job being the sycophant in the situation, but she's also paired with Ralph Fiennes, who, if you don't know, Ralph Fiennes played Voldemort in Harry Potter. He's a very, very famous actor for other roles, but that's probably the one that's going to be most recognizable for him. He does a great job being this chef gone mad, and not just in his transformation from going from seemingly normal to devious, but in the beginning, you just are taken into this world immediately because of the way he is and the mannerisms he has. It is the high, fine dining version of watching something like The Bear, but without all the hard edges that The Bear kind of brings to the fine dining. It keeps you on the edge of your seat. It very much is a thrilling watch. And it made me kind of think about some of these experiences, right, that we see every single day on Netflix, right? I was not a big connoisseur of some of these shows like Chef's Table until very recently, when I was in the area of Arizona and I was near one of the restaurants that were highlighted on Chef's Table Pizza. And I'm sure, I'm sure nobody highlighted in the show wants to be compared to this movie, but this movie is a parody of those types of shows. We've all overindulgence of these shows in different versions in various versions, right? I mean, you can even go to the Great British Baking Show and see the types of shots that these shows really have defined, right? They've really created a genre of like, hey, you can take your camera and you can slow pan across a beautifully plated dish, and all of a sudden it seems to be entertaining and it elevates it to a high level. Recently, I was in Scottsdale. There was I got the opportunity to go to Pizzeria Bianco, which is featured in one of the first episodes of Chef's Table Pizza. And I had gone to the restaurant just knowing that it was highlighted, and didn't go to the downtown one. I went to the one that was a little bit north of Phoenix. And I had wished I watched the episode of Chef's Table before I had gone there. Because it was much more enlightening to see and hear the backstory of the particular chef from the Bronx and then go eat his food. It seemed to me, being in an urban area that has a lot of culinary experiences, it wasn't mind-blowing, the food that I had. It was really good. I'm not saying it wasn't a bad experience, but I wish I had had that context of seeing that show before I had gone, because I would have ordered differently, and I would have probably, had that context in mind. And it makes you realize that these shows, by adding that little bit of context behind the creation of the food, is what generates the interest. Because had I not known that this restaurant was on Chef's Table, I probably wouldn't have gone. It was that interest knowing that there was something behind this, and Netflix's presentation of this food kind of had elevated it into a higher status than it probably should have been in the first place. Because at the end of the day, it's just pizza, and it's just pizza, right? It's pizza shot beautifully with a low aperture and a low f-stop in slow motion, and it's beautifully captured in a cinematography way. But at the end of the day, it's still pizza, right? So this movie, in comparison with some of these presentations that we've been seeing over and over and over again, just hits perfectly, because it is parodying and it's a heavy satire of just how much importance we've given to some of these things that happen in culinary restaurants around the country, in high fine dining, and they kind of make fun of them and they poke at them, and they kind of turn the table a little bit and make it and make you think about how ridiculous some of these things are. I know I've been to fancy restaurants before where you're served very little food, and you're I think you're supposed to be amazed by the presentation, and sometimes I think people resist saying what they actually feel in those situations where they're like, well, there better be 35 more of these plates coming out, right? So I think this movie does a great job parodying that life. There is a real quick example of one of these situations. One of the meals that they get served is bread without the bread. It's just the accoutrements surrounding the bread, and they get told this story about the ethics of the bread and how it was made, and therefore they get no bread. And it is very intellectual. It's very high level. It's very makes you think, but at the end of the day, they're still not eating. And I think it's just a perfect parody of some of these things that we've been presented with. So if you've ever felt FOMO, I guess is what I'm saying, from seeing these high dining, high culinary experiences, fine dining experiences, watch The Menu, because it's a perfect lampooning of those situations. And you're very quickly, your feeling of FOMO is going to fall away after watching this movie, because it's such a perfect parody. It is very dark. I will warn people. It's a very, very dark comedy. It's more of what I think horror films should be is this movie. Horror films tend to, rely on old cliches. Excuse me. Sorry, I've been nursing a cough. Horror movies tend to fall upon these old cliches that make you scared. This movie does make you tense while you're watching it, so be aware of that. It is a horror movie for people who don't like horror. It's a very dark comedy. It is gory at times, but it is a very, very, it's probably what people would call a dark comedy. So go into it with that kind of mindset, and I think you'll enjoy yourself. It's a very, very fun experience, and it's definitely going to make me look at Chef's Table in a different light. I hope that none of my chefs are Ralph Fiennes in the future. But yeah, that is the Menu. It came out in 2022, and it is a fantastic watch. I got to watch a little bit of it on a plane coming back last night, and while it was very, 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 very bumpy, it kind of distracted me a little bit from the flight. So I'm forever grateful for that particular this particular movie. And again, that's the director. That's The Menu, directed by Mark Mylod. That stars Ralph Fiennes and Anya Taylor-Joy. Both incredible performances by the both of them. When we get back, we're going to take a quick break here, and we're going to talk a little bit about Yankees spring training. Brian Cashman had a lot to say. Marcus Stroman had a lot to say. And we'll talk about a little bit about the Yankees' financial might on this episode of the Powell Not Found podcast, coming to you soon. Let's take a quick break. Hey, welcome back to the show, everybody. This is Mark Powell with the Powell Not Found podcast, episode 53. Again, coming back to you this week. And as we slowly approach April, you would think that the baseball news of the day would be light. But the Yankees have reported, at least pitchers and catchers have reported for spring training on February 12th. And boy, was there drama right off the bat. Marcus Stroman, who is seemingly slated to be the sixth starter for the Yankees, came right out and said basically that he was a starter. He was not going to pitch in the bullpen. They had interviewed him, and he made himself very, very clear. There had been rumors all winter long that the Yankees were trying to trade off Marcus Stroman's contract. $18 million. He has a year with the Yankees if he reaches a certain innings limit. I want to say it's 140, but I could be wrong. And so he is a free agent after this year. It would kind of make sense considering that the Yankees currently have a deluge of pitching behind Garrett Cole, Max Fried, Carlos Rodon, Heel, Schmidt. And so Stroman, who was acquired last winter, seemingly would be the one kind of out of the equation here. He would be the sixth starter. And he made it very, very clear when reporters asked him whether he would accept a bullpen role, and his response was, I'm a starter. It's not going to happen. They also did ask him whether he was willing to pitch in the bullpen in the playoffs, and he did. To his credit, he did say that those are totally different situations. But as of right now, he is very much asserting his position as a starter. But as a fan and as a person who follows the Yankees, who wants the Yankees to be cohesive and wants them to duplicate their run, if not further their run by winning a championship, one of the things you don't want to hear right off the bat is a player complaining with the front office, right? Especially for the $18 million, whatever he's owed this year. The last thing you want to hear is someone kind of barking at the front office and not being a team player, right? This is still Aaron Judge's team. This is still a team that it follows his lead, and his lead is very much giving the non-controversial answer. It's a tradition that has really been set up by Derek Jeter from years ago, and Aaron Judge is just continuing it into the future. So the last thing you want to hear is dissension, even though it's very clear where Marcus Stroman is coming from with his with him being adamant that he is a starter, right? You don't want to be relegated to the bullpen. If you're a starter and you've worked hard to be a starter, you want to be a starter. With the Yankees' position right now, I'm surprised they haven't given him a slot. I would imagine, Heel would be, even though he is coming off of a Rookie of the Year season, he was inconsistent. I wouldn't think that the Yankees would want to go as a full-time starter with him even in the second year, even despite he had a pretty impressive campaign. Because remember, Heel wasn't promised a starting position before Garrett Cole got hurt last year and was out for the first 2 months with his, what do we want to call it, Tommy John-like scare. So you can imagine that Marcus Stroman is probably confused and a little bit kind of wondering, how did this happen? You went out as a team and acquired me last winter to be a starter, and now there's rumors of me being a bullpen piece. As a fan, you want him to just do whatever the team tells him to, especially for $18 million a year. For $18 million a year, I'd be, serving hot dogs as a vendor every single day. There's a lot of things that I would do on a baseball team for $18 million. That's a lot of money, right, to be complaining about your position. But you can understand the situation doesn't look good. And also that precedent of him being a bullpen starter really only happened towards the end of the year when the Yankees had already kind of clinched and a postseason berth, and they were kind of fiddling with the rotation and using him as a sixth man. So, it's spring training. You want your players to fight. I think I made a point last year of saying that Marcus Stroman, wearing his emotion on his sleeve, was a good thing for this team. The team tends to be a little bit more open to buttoned up. But with him not reporting for the first 2 days, not on time, and then this, it just feels like we're filling a void of controversy that used to be filled by people like Domingo Germán or used to be filled with Josh Donaldson, right? Like, we don't need on this team that kind of controversy brewing. They need to just be focused on baseball. So that was a weird way for the Yankees to start spring training with that particular news. Aaron Boone, Brian Cashman, both came out in support of him. Of course, they are going to. Brian Cashman was also asked about the trade viability of Marcus Stroman, and he didn't. He wasn't going to comment on that. I don't think he really can comment on that. But I would be surprised if Marcus Stroman was on this team come April, because the Yankees have a decision to make, right? Who's going to fill in that spot, right? They have Will Warren in the minor leagues as a starting pitching option, I believe. So where are you going to put him, right? You're not going to run with a six-man rotation come April, even though injuries will happen. Hopefully we don't run into a situation with Garrett Cole this season as we did last season. But where do you put that sixth starter? So they're going to have to answer that question soon, but maybe not at this moment. Aaron Boone came and addressed the media today and told us there's some injuries with Giancarlo Stanton and Trent Grisham. Trent Grisham is a little bit, I guess, pulled a hamstring, and he's getting better and resuming baseball activities. But Giancarlo Stanton has tennis elbow. And you got to feel for the guy, don't you? I mean, every season, Giancarlo Stanton gets plagued with some sort of injury. We said last year throughout the entire season that the man was made out of glass. We have not even thrown a pitch yet, and Giancarlo is fighting through injury. Aaron Boone went on to say that basically this was something he was battling through last year, even through October, which is kind of impressive considering Giancarlo Stanton had, outside of Glaber and Juan Soto, had probably the best October of anybody, right, throughout the season, throughout the postseason. So even if he was playing through injury, he still can be productive. So it remains unlikely that he's going to be ready for opening day. And again, unfortunately, because of his injuries, it's going to bring out the people saying, man, this contract gets worse and worse by the day. This year, Giancarlo Stanton is on the hook for $32 million. You really want it, and that's according to Fangraphs, you really want to make sure that Giancarlo Stanton plays these last 3 years of his contract until he is, one second. Sorry, I had to be on the mute button again. You want to make sure that he is, there's a club option in 2028 that's not going to get picked up. I mean, he's got 3 more years, really, until 2027. $32 million, $29 million, and $25 million. That apparently was a bell curve-like contract. You want to make sure that he's going to be playing. And to hear this injury so quickly, in a way, it's good that it happened now as opposed to happening in the middle of the season. But still unfortunate that that Giancarlo is still struggling with an injury. So we'll see what happens. I mean, he is 35 years old. These things are expected to happen, but not a good start to the season with Giancarlo getting hurt. One of the good things about these spring training interviews with Brian Cashman, with Aaron Boone, with the players, is that you get to see their reaction to what happened this winter, right? This winter, the Dodgers spent money. They continue to spend money. They continue to defer money like crazy. And finally, this is SNY, finally asked Brian Cashman the critical question about how does it feel for the Yankees not to be the top dog in not only the American League, but in Major League Baseball. And I thought it was kind of an interesting question to pose to him. I didn't really expect an answer, but here's what Brian Cashman said. Let's hear a little bit of that audio now.
In the game, you guys are obviously still up there in terms of payroll for a lot of your tenure. You guys were number one. You guys were always up there.
I don't know. I don't think about that. I never thought about it, before, and I don't think about it now. Like I look at our division, I see the Rays and how they go about it and the rosters they put together and the system they have. I see, obviously what Mike Elias, who's down the street here, has built with his organization as he's taken time and patience to put it together. The Red Sox obviously have done a great job of scouting and developing and being patient. Now obviously have done some major imports with some trades and free agent signs, and obviously Toronto on a year in and year out basis is always predicted to do damage. So like I'm just using the American League East alone. Outside of that, you can speak to where Oakland's now, or Sacramento is at, or who they are, and what Houston is now remaking themselves in as they've lost some challenging guys but replaced them with quality guys, or Seattle with the pitching they have, which seems to be second to none, or Cleveland and the operation that they've got and how they go about it and the team that they're putting forward and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And the Tigers obviously just got baptized into the postseason last year in Kansas City. And so ultimately there's a lot of different ways to climb the mountain, a lot of different ways to peel that onion. And the only thing in the end matters is winning in October and finding a way past. And I think, that's the focus. It doesn't matter how you do it. And we have a chance to do it a lot of different ways, via the draft, via signs and free agents.
I think the key thing here is that you see Brian Cashman kind of backing up on this answer, saying that there's a lot of ways to peel an onion, right? And there are. But I think at some point the Yankees will have to answer to what are you going to do about these teams that continue to defer money, right, and invest money, and then get around this luxury tax that you don't want to go over, right? How do you deal with these teams that are more willing to be George Steinbrenner-esque than the team that was built by George Steinbrenner, right? There are moments where the Dodgers are, due to the way that they invest the money in the back end, are not going to be paying a dime, right? That they have effectively found a loophole to make themselves richer than the richest team in baseball. I think at some point the Yankees will have to start playing this game. That, yes, I do believe that you should be developing your players. You should be creating a good farm system, right? You shouldn't be relying on paying millions and millions and millions of dollars. But how many free agents are the Yankees willing to miss out on before they start to realize that they have to pivot? That's the question. Now, if they come out and they win a championship with all these moves that they've done this year with Max Fried, with Cody Bellinger, right, with Paul Goldschmidt, with Devin Williams, then one can argue, hey, the Yankees have figured something out. The Yankee way still works. But if the Dodgers win not only last year, but this year and next year and the next year, and the Red Sox just added deferrals to Bregman, if they win this year, if they start seeing, if these teams that are using deferrals to their advantage start seeing championships, then the Yankees will have to start answering this question a little bit more directly than they have been. It is a surprising era to be in as a Yankees fan, right? As a child, when I was 9 years old, I was not very acutely aware of the Yankees' financial might, outside of them getting every single player from the Oakland A's and once they were done with free agency. But as they've turned into revenue sharing, and as things the process of winning a world championship has gotten more difficult each year, and now teams are becoming more clever, whether it's the introduction of analytics originally, if it's the introduction of higher level analytics like the Rays have done, if it's the introduction of defensive shifts, if it's the introduction of bullpen games, all of these little things have added up, right? Might deferrals be another one of those advantages that the Yankees have to be better at, getting ahead of the curve than they have been? Is the traditional mindset of building a team and creating a foundational farm system, is that dead in an era where deferrals can help you buy every player in baseball? And if that becomes the case, when does Major League Baseball step in? That is my question. It's just interesting to me this week to see the Yankees finally reckoning with, hey, you're not the only big dog in the market anymore. The Dodgers have become the team of Japan. The Yankees were that with Hideki Matsui, with Tanaka. They're no longer that, right? They are amongst the crowd now. So it was interesting to see that reporter, and kudos to that reporter for actually posing the question about how they feel they have to actually rebuild their team in light of the Dodgers doing what they did this offseason and deferring money and all that. So very, very interesting question. And with that, we are going to go ahead and wrap up the show for tonight. Again, next week, we'll have a more regular scheduled program. We'll be probably talking about the SNL 50 celebration. We'll be talking about some movies. Hopefully I can get to see the Marvel movie that just came out to middling reviews. And we will be back on our normal scheduled programming each weekend here on the Powell Not Found podcast. Thank you for tuning in, and have a good week, everybody. Bye.